They don't let me compete because I'm better off being in a cage and working. But the cosplay part of it, what I love is doing children's masquerade stuff because I want kids to read. And the best way for them to learn how to read is to pick their favorite characters, create the stuff, read it, and learn to research at a young age. So you always see me chasing little kids down and saying, hey, do you want to come and participate? We've got materials, we've got stuff around. And let's see, my official credentials. I'm the official sari wrapper for ICG. Anything that you want to do with sari material, I've got it. And if I ever do a male costume panel, he's my victim and he knows it too. But that's basically it. I love costuming.
So, a couple of definitions, just to get them out of the way. We're going to talk about costume and cosplay as art. That's the instructions they gave us. So, when I say costume or cosplay, I am talking about the same activity. When I first started doing this, we talked about it as costume, and what you wore out and about in crowds was called costume. And more recently, through a complicated history, the term cosplay came into term. And it's become very famous thanks to Facebook and Comic-Cons. But we are talking about the same activity. People dressing up in costumes they've either made up themselves or taken from other media to reproduce in the real world in 3 dimensions, because they want to do it and they want to have fun and or create art. So, just so we're clear, we don't have a war of words here. We are talking about the same thing. And these days when I write rules for what we call a masquerade at Worldcon, we always describe it as a costume/cosplay competition. Masquerade it acquired the name 74 years ago when the masquerade was actually a costume party. And they kept calling it a costume party, but they started having a contest as well. And then the contest got big, so it became the whole night, it became a show. But they never changed the name because fans love traditions. So if you've never been to a Worldcon and they talk about a masquerade, they're not talking usually about a party, they're talking about the show. And I helped animate Los Angeles start their cosplay contest. And that was when I started realizing that younger fans who didn't go to Worldcons didn't know what I meant by masquerade. So, masquerade, as it's done at Worldcon and CostumeCon and the fan-run conventions, is actually now recognized as an art form by the Library of Congress. And all of the recordings of those competitions, copies now go and are archived and preserved at the Library of Congress. So, LOC is convinced that what we do is art. We already do.
We're also official, according to the library.
Well, it does make it easier when you're trying to explain things to customs, for instance. Why your suitcase is so full of weird. So, that's definitions. I would like to invite each of you to make your observations about cosplay as art. You know, where do you, what strikes a chord with you in terms of art when you're seeing cosplay? And then we'll start taking some questions, but I want to get rolling because it's a kind of fuzzy subject.
What makes it art, to me, is when someone has put a lot of effort into the workmanship. And that doesn't necessarily mean just putting beads and sequins all over it, although that is definitely one form of it. But you can have a fairly simple costume that was a lot of work to make and to get right. And to me, that says you're doing art.
There's so many different forms. And I have a sister who's a perfectionist, and she really is the one that does a lot of the sewing and creating. She's very well color matched. And she said, oh, you finally come into something where you know how to put color together. And I go, yeah. And then after I put something together, she goes on to adding more stuff. So it's something to me that has to be, in order for me to be inspired, it has to be looked at in terms of what do I put together, how do I put it together, and then the total picture. So you can throw glitter on anything and it looks good, but where are you going to put the glitter? That's what fine details it comes down to for me. And also, it's a great way to create characters. I also write on the side, so trying to imagine my character. So there's always friends that I'm playing dollhouse with. You know what I mean? Because you're actually using a human being for different swatches of materials, whatever you want to add to it to build that character.
So for me, from an art theory point of view, taking a little step back, craftsmanship and technique are really important. Where I see I'm always struck by the art is where people take a two-dimensional material and they render it into 3 dimensions, draped on the human form, to something that moves and evokes a response from the audience, from the people who see it. And so I've met people who can't sew a straight line in their life, but when they put it on, because they've taken the time, the lines are there, the eye was there when they drape their creation onto a human frame, then the vision is realized. So this idea of having a mind's eye vision that you create in the real world and put on a person as the canvas, there is a definite art to doing this well. And when you add the component of them as the person inside it, filling out that physical object with an emotional context, the play part of cosplay, it's another dimension to it. It doesn't have to be complicated sketch comedy or big drama, but the fact that your emotional space inside the fabricated space is what completes your piece. It really is this amazing amalgamation of different arts that all depends on being put on a human body. And it's one of the things I love about it. I used to enter contests to win, and that lasted about 1.5 years. I got better, and then I got on stage to see what response I could get back from the audience. And that connection. Or same thing in the hall. If I'm making something just to run around in, that's where I tend to get funny. You know, I built a Dalek out of bamboo and coconuts.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, and it's gone all the way to London and back.
I think I've seen that.
Yes, the tiki Dalek. And your point about if something touches a chord with you and you want to create it, go for it. That's what it's about. For many cosplayers want to work off of existing two-dimensional art from games or paintings or anime or whatever. And again, that eye to go from a two-dimensional rendering that doesn't rely on gravity and execute it in the real world in 3 dimensions is a kind of art that we've been recognized as a new art form by not only the Library of Congress, but international, the other international archives. All 3 agreed. So these recordings of what we do on our little stages actually are saved for the ages around the world.
I think it's like taking Halloween and have fun with it all year round. That's the best way I can explain it. And we do. So if we get stopped by TSA, God help us, because they're not going to figure out what's in our suitcase. We know what it is, but so we have a little. So there's a whole panel that we talk about
how to travel with costumes. Yes. So, having sort of introduced this, I want to ask you what you hoped we would talk about today, because the subject, as they put it in the program, is a little fuzzy, and we could go in about 100 different directions. So, I want to know from you if there's something you really wanted to hear us talk about today. Anybody?
Come on, volunteers. I can volunteer you very easily.
Carol, you had your hand up earlier. What was your comment?
I was going to mention that there were other international archives besides the Library of Congress, so you already covered that.
Okay.
I also I wish you want to know how do we improve our custom. I mean, new methods, something we can do to improve ourselves.
Okay, and skills, all right. So we have resources now because of the internet and because of YouTube. There are hundreds of costumes around the world who are willing to share what they figured out how to do. I mentioned I was the chair of CostumeCon in 2008. Now that's an annual convention, which is just about costumes, about making, wearing. It has 3 shows. It has a science fiction contest. It has a historical contest where people actually most of them do research on how historical garments were made and attempt to recreate them or an interpretation based on them. And there's also a future fashion show where people send in sketches 6 months in advance. The book is assembled and sent out, and then people write back and say, ooh, I want to try and make that for real from somebody else's drawing on a page. But it's this gathering of the tribe, all of us who love making things to wear, and we share what we know. It's really this amazing thing, and it's in a different city every year. So next year it's in San Diego, California, and then it moves to Massachusetts. So it travels. So sometimes it'll be closer than others. But strongly associated with that is a group called the International Costumers Guild, which is a bunch of people who like to make costumes. And we actually started out because the group that ran CostumeCon 3 actually formed a club in order to run it. And some of them were moving to California and wanted to have a club in California. So we started one in California, and then a group started in New Jersey. And we said, ooh, we have 3 clubs. We could be an international guild. Because we had one member who lived in the Virgin Islands, which made us international. And it's now grown. There are 20-odd chapters around the world, including one called the Silicon Web. We don't live in a particular area. I'm the president of that chapter, but we share information and expertise online. But anyone can form a chapter, and we encourage this behavior. And then there are, besides the chapters, there are special interest groups, people who want to do military costumes. So they belong to a chapter, but they also belong to the military interest group so that they, talk about how they solve the problem. So sharing is one of the biggest things. You're doing Starfleet, so I'm sure you're aware of the different Starfleet costume wikis that are out there. The amount of detail that fans have accumulated online are amazing. If you want to build a Dalek, if you're a Doctor Who fan, there is actually a Dalek Builders Forum. And if you join for essentially free, you can download plans to build Dalek replicas, which is where I got the plans for mine, and then instead of building it out of what everyone else used, I used bamboo blinds and half coconut shells.
It was very real looking, I can tell you that. Tell them about the one who served drinks.
Oh, well, but that's not a costume. I built a robot that makes cocktails. and it won gold medals in competitions. So,
One of the really neatest things about costuming, cosplay, however we want to put it, we all, not only do we share each other's information, because we can just go on the site and put out requests for information or whatever. Cosplayers. Our group's very special because there's no, we're all friends, and we're closer and tighter friends in our community more than any of the other groups in sci-fi.
we tried.
Oh, we try. We do well. And you can belong to more than one group.
Yeah, competition used to be fierce and ugly.
Yeah.
In the late 70s, early 80s, there were several essentially feuding groups who were always trying to one-up each other. And it was there were feuds going on between these groups of people, and we got better. Competition is fine, but most of us realize that we all love making costumes. We should not hate each other. I have observed that in newer fandoms, we've watched people go through the same growth sort of thing, especially young fans join, and they're still figuring out how to be grown-ups. And I don't want to be, not trying to diss them. It's all part of growing up, of learning how to share the things you love and compete against each other without going to war with each other. That's the point where you're backstage, and you see half a dozen amazing things, and rather than, I hate them and going to beat me, I must do something, it's like, wow, that's amazing. Let's see who wins what. And part of this is in the contests that are run the way Worldcon does it, is the judges don't have a limit on the number of prizes they get to look at all the costumes and then decide usually it comes out around 50% between workmanship and how things look on stage. But there have been shows where like 75% of the things that went across the stage actually got recognition by the judges because it was all that good. And since often we're judging our peers, for a little while there was, well, can you, if you're married to someone and they're in the contest and you're judging, can you do that? Well, the answer is yes, and if you're concerned that you can't, the fact you're married to them is a problem, or that you just divorced them and it's a problem, then you tell the other judges and you step out of talking about that particular costume if you have a connection that you don't think you can get around. And again, this comes to being collegial.
I think one of the neatest things about going to costume time, some of us are just sort of like hooked and we're going to go no matter what. But for newer folks come in, one of the scholarships that's given out, different groups give out scholarships to go attend and I'm talking about just a membership, that if your costume wins, you have a chance to get a scholarship to go to the next costume con. We would love to bring costume con here to Puerto Rico, as you can tell by his outfit and mine, we really could have a lot of fun with it. So,
I'd like to step back briefly to the question of what makes it art.
Okay.
And, I said the emphasis on workmanship, on putting a lot of care and thought into the details. But there's another kind of art, too. And that is what I call closet costuming. Having an eye for what goes together, what can make a given costume. And I would like to call out this gentleman right here. Are you being Nick Fury?
Betcha. Betcha.
Okay. But you have looked at the costume and you've either looked in your closet or gone out looking for things that would go together to make that costume work inexpensively and comfortably and fun.
Yeah, only by the side.
And that's art too. That's just a different level of art.
I'm a firm believer in assembled costumes, and much of what I wear in the halls, I've actually built a wardrobe, so I can grab pieces according to whether I feel fat or not. No spandex on days I feel fat. But it means that I can actually get many combinations out of a few pieces. You ask, how do you get better? One thing is I encourage people to challenge themselves. It's okay to try a technique and not get it right the first time. One thing is, especially with cosplay techniques, I observe that there are trends. So right now, of course, EVA foam armor is the big trend. And I was at our tech shop, which is a shared workspace we have in San Jose, and I didn't realize what the kids were doing on their workbench. They were taking a Dremel tool and they were shaping what I realized was a giant double-edged axe blade with the Dremel tool from foam. And it worked, but it was noisy, smelly, and it was taking a very long time. And had I noticed earlier, I would have said, oh, for that step, you don't want the Dremel, you want a $10 electric carving knife. Because you can zip around the edges of the blade to get the bevel, and then you can clean it up with the Dremel. It would have been done in about 45 minutes if I'd noticed earlier and said, oh, go run over to the store, get the and sharing that kind of thing is really cool. So a warning I would offer, just because something is trending everywhere on YouTube, it's not the only way to do something. If you come up with an idea, a crazy idea for building something, try it. It's because I needed a space helmet. So I sewed a clear beach ball and threaded piano wire into the seams so that it would pop open. Poof, I had a space helmet. It had an opening at the top and the bottom because I was wearing a wig that was 3 feet tall and had to come out of the space helmet. So you started to ask a question in the...
Yeah. What do you think about the skin color and the cosplay size? Chubby girls or black girl make a white character?
So as Lee said, to a great degree, I subscribe to the if playing a character makes you happy, you should do it.
I'm Latina, I'm black, but I love Spider-Woman, and I make Angelwoman. She is blonde and white, but I love Angelwoman.
I'll tell you, when I saw you posing, I recognized the character that you were. Like I said, good job, didn't I?
Yeah, thank you.
So
You've done a very good job, and I would encourage you to do more.
So I'm going to be frank here. A chunk of the body shaming or skin color complaints I see, I do chalk up to youth. There's again, not having figured out how to cope with more complicated questions of living in a complicated adult world, we sometimes fall back on simple answers. And as you get older, you learn better how to deal with all the different kinds of people in the world. I firmly subscribe that if you're respectful of the spirit of a character, then you should play it. And there are a couple of exceptions, and they're very specific to white people using makeup to play people of color. You do not want to be in the blackface situation, and that's because in the U.S. especially, but in Western culture, because of the power imbalance through history, that is inappropriate behavior.
And the historical misuse.
Right. There is a history of that. So it is important to be sensitive to your audience. But just because Storm is usually portrayed as a black woman doesn't mean that a white woman or a white man who wants to play Storm can't make that costume. It's a question.
Kid has gotten very, very, I don't want to say popular, but much more common than it used to be. Yeah, if you can have a female Thor, why can't you have a black Thor?
Yes. So as a costumer, who loves the art form, my answer is if you love a character and you want to portray it with love and respect, then that's the key to me. I'm going to look at what your costume looks and the impression you create as you go. But I'm also 56 years old, and I've had my share of as a gay man, I've had my share of disrespect in my life. So I have learned, it takes a while to learn how to respond with respect. And I'm watching the cosplay community grow up in that respect. I watched it happen in my generation of costumers. It's what we hope we will see keep happening, and we encourage people who haven't quite got it to behave better. That's all we can ask. Does that answer your question? Or is it at least answered somewhat? I think your costume is beautiful, and I would have no questions
How
anywhere
about
to
show
see
your
you come up.
costume? Come on up.
I would like both of them to show them.
Wow.
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 People behind can see it too, please.
The
Yes.
front is beautiful.
It's the traditional runway, we have to make the gate, so you can see all sides. That's right. Because you, if it's good, you made it. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I have 10 years in cosplay.
It's so as somebody who's been costuming for so many years, I just want to see someone who loves the costume. And if they're recreating a character, treats that character with some respect. And you can, even if you're doing a joke costume, you can still treat the subject matter with respect. The tiki doll, dogs are supposed to be terrifying. They're the first monster from after you, and kids literally hid behind their sofas when the dogs first appeared on screen because they were these scary things. And I've had a few children run away from the tiki doll when it's out. Most gay children run towards the tiki doll to hug it, which is problematic because once they get within 2 feet, I can't see them anymore,
No.
and I have to worry about running over them.
No, we're going over the pleasure.
So, for me, the art of costume and cosplay is about celebrating all the things we love and turning them into these inhabited, three-dimensional sculptures that we wear. I do want to say that while craftsmanship is really important, I have seen, as I mentioned, some very, very simply assembled things that still, once they were done, are jaw-dropping. And they just make you stop and appreciate somebody's eye for making something happen, whether it's assembled from store-bought items or made from scratch. It doesn't matter. You can still have that, evoke that response from your audience.
Well, that's sort of what I was thinking earlier when you were talking about cosplay as an art form. Whether it's assembled or it's hardware-based or fabric-based or whatever. To me, the real art part of it starts with the concept and the inspiration. And then through any number of different mechanisms arriving at a final product that is successful. However you define your personal success. It's like, you know,
it's a process.
It may be a very simple outfit, but does it look the way you envisioned it in the first place?
It's a process from concept to design to execution to presentation, whether it's in a contest or just running around to show off to people. That process, that's the artistic process of cosplay. And
for me personally, every time I do a costume, I want to learn something new. So I always, sooner or later, there's a new technique in whatever I'm doing. But that's me. So
I have a friend who insisted on growing flax and making her own linen.
Oh, jeez.
At one point. Again, she got better. But so anytime she starts a new art project, she didn't plant. No, she did plant the flax. I mean, she grew it in her backyard, and she didn't make all of the linen, but she made enough that she could claim that she had.
I knew a guy in college. He was doing a Native American thing, and he went out and trapped the coyote and skinned it and tanned the leather the traditional way to do his head, because he wouldn't wear it if it wasn't done the right way. And it's like, I really respected him. I thought he was nuts. But like I said, that was his choice.
We're nuts. That's why we're in this field. That's true. I have to admit that I am extraordinarily curious about your interpretation of Suicide Squad Harley. Could you tell us a little about that show?
I am Dr. Harley Quinn, the Eskimo medicine woman.
Cool.
Turn around,
showing up.
And like I said, my new learning experience with this one. There are websites online where you can design and have printed your own fabric. So I designed and I custom-made fabric.
So this is a mashup between Harley Quinn and Dr. Quinn.
And the third. Online game show. We made some joke about Harley Quinn, the medicine woman. And I said I can go one better.
That is cool.
I think you brought up a point about right behind you. You brought up a point, and I guess one of the biggest things that people are talking about is in terms of diversity, in terms of the different costuming that goes in. Hell, it was there all the time, and all of a sudden, the big word is diversity. If you like it, do it. And believe me, the community is wide out there. We're all there to support you. And joining ICG, you've got access to thousands of costumes that are there on display, and it's available.
Yeah, I don't want to make this an hour-long advertisement for the ICG, even though I'm one of its founders. But you touched on something else. Something else that is a hot topic right now is the concept of cultural appropriation. And as artists, I do not feel it is inappropriate for us to draw elements and respectfully use them from many cultures. But particularly when you're dealing with objects or dress that has ritual significance, you don't, the classic example is you don't buy the Spirit Halloween Red Indian headdress, and run around in bad war paint. That is disrespectful. That is cultural appropriation. And again, it's the power balance. On the other hand, I know people who are whiter than I am, who have very carefully researched an entire cultural dress tradition and created that dress to present in a historical masquerade as an example of what happens when you research all of these traditional techniques and present it. very different thing. And again, it is about respect for the traditions that you are borrowing.
Well, that's something that I did occur to me as I was putting this together. I would not normally use the word Eskimo, but it's baked into the song and everything, and I'm kind of stuck with it. But, you know, it is what it is.
So you're actually, you're prepared for that question.
Yeah.
The reason it's there is because this is from a song.
Right. And yeah, as far as the face, I was intrigued by some of the facial markings and stuff, and it was a toss-up between doing sort of, you know, the domino mask, but because it's a mashup and I was trying to thread 3 different things together, it's, you know, carefully picking and choosing. Believe it or not, I actually used a slightly, being an extremely pale person myself, I went even whiter because of the Harley Quinn thing. She always has a very, you know, pale look. Yeah, kind of a, this is probably the closest to that, stepping over that line I've probably ever gotten. After 30 years of costume.
To get back to the techniques question, another place you can look for things to learn is if you search wearable art rather than costume. You will find an amazing treasure trove of decoration and embellishment techniques. There's an entire industry of people who take T-shirts and turn them into art pieces you can wear, which is astonishing. If you need to make costume shoes, my friend Margot has a website, sassyfeet.com, where she teaches you how to buy cheap shoes at Roche or Marshalls, and with the paints and things that she's researched, you can transform them into something that looks completely different. I did a Barbarella costume. I had a set of silver go-go boots, which looked fine. They were the right size. I wore them once. I ended up the evening in stocking feet because they were terrible shoes. The cantilever was wrong, so the heel gave you no support at all. It just made you slide your toes the boot. So then I went online and I found a $30 pair of black overcalf zip rain boots, and then I went and ordered paint from Margot's website, and I created the silver and red boots from Barbarella that I can wear all day now, and didn't cost a lot of money, and Margot's instructions are really good. You know, she sells the paints, and she's my friend, so I do recommend buying from her. But they're sold by lots of craft.
You can find go-go boots in a stunning variety of colors on eBay.
The problem is that almost all of them have this same design flaw, that the cantilever in the heel, your weight doesn't rest on your heel. Your weight all rests on the toe, and you slide down into the boot. And that was the problem I ran into.
My partner has a couple of pairs of those for some of his drag costumes, and he doesn't have any problem.
So often for tall go-go boots, if you look, it's actually a platform front. So the slope is not as big.
Yes.
But the ones with the 3-inch stack heel, yeah, every pair I've tried on has sent me slightly to the toe. So
Going back to the costume and art form, if you're new costumer or old costumer, and not to make a thing for Costume Con, but there's just so much information there. You can go from morning to evening, and there are classes and workshops everywhere. You know, I mean, so it's just a place to go have a great time. I look at it as 4 days of, you know, fun.
And truth in advertising, it's not the only one. There's also Costume College, which happens in Southern California every year. For many years, they were very focused on historical dress, but they've been working very hard to expand the techniques and genre that they teach. And frequently, you know, many fan-run conventions and Comic Cons will have little workshops on costume techniques. So
Another place you can look for historical techniques and ideas is on SCA websites, Society for Creative Anachronism, because they are very much into researching how things were done before we had mass market technology.
some of them are better than others.
Yes.
in particular, I have a friend who has one of the only medieval Japanese characters in the SCA. It's a very small group of people. There are only a few dozen. And newcomers who want to do Japanese always end up looking at artwork from Edo period Japan, which is way too late. It's the wrong chunk of history for the SCA. And so they're always having to walk people back to the very few pieces of actual art that exists for him, which is the correct time of history. Because it's all supposed to be roughly parallel to medieval Europe. That's the time period. Pre-1600. So yeah, and they all end up in the 17 or 1800s, where there are many pictorial records from Japan. So every so often, on her friends list on Facebook, we get a rant from Lisa, because there's been yet another newbie who's again found the same Edo period artwork and has posted it to the list as an example of what you can do, and they all have to politely explain that no, that isn't how it works.
That's a really excellent 19th century outfit. Yeah.
Or they all want to be fox spirits.
Yeah.
And not understanding that that's a bad thing.
Well, now that is edging toward cultural appropriation.
Absolutely.
Depending on how poorly they interpret it, it can go all the way to the far end of cultural appropriation.
Well, they want to be ninja, warrior, pirate, princess, fox spirits.
Right.
No.
It actually happened once. The description somebody wrote of the persona they wanted to have in the SCA pretty much boiled down to ninja, warrior, pirate, orphan, princess, lost princess, fox spirit.
That's LARPing.
What?
That's the point. It's LARPing.
Maybe you take that one to a furry con.
But but again, trying to haul this back from wandering around, back to the idea of cosplay and costume as art. This idea of concept, design, execution, and presentation, whether it's formal or for fun, for me, that flow is what makes it art. I buy the silly suits because they're well made and they cost $99. They for long, complicated reasons, when I'm talking about Worldcon, formally, I wear a business suit. My husband, who was campaigning for us to have the right to hold Worldcon, started this, and so I continued. But when it was actually decided that I would be the chair for one, so he's there in this very academic-looking brown tweed suit, and I'm going to be introduced, and it was in December, so I got a holiday version of one of these suits covered in snowflakes.
You really did.
And still wearing a very nice suit, but it was also, earlier in running another convention, I was criticized for wearing a business suit to a Vanish event. And the point of the business suit was to say, we're serious about doing the business part of it right. And so I'm still going to wear a business suit, but there's no reason it has to be boring. And something this complicated, I don't have that many hours, and I tried the first one, was happy with the product, so I bought more. What I'll be wearing tonight, on the other hand, I made most of this, so they're different outfits for different applications. This one is to create a splash and a giggle, and it's vaguely disposable for me at that price point. I have the privilege of now having a comfortable enough income that I can drop $100 on a suit, but I'll only wear it a few times. I know that's not true for everyone, but it lets me make a point in a crowd that I can't make otherwise. Which is another thing art is really good for, is making people wake up and look at their assumptions. And cosplay does that a lot. Any other questions or comments? We got about 5 minutes or so left.
I want to talk about one other form of cosplay art that you don't see much of, but when you do, it's just amazing, and that is wheelchair art. When someone is disabled and in a motorized chair, and they turn it into a chariot or a dragon or I saw one once that was a Pegasus. It was amazing.
We can cosplay everything.
Yeah, I make a League of Legends character. It's a centaur with it's a centaur half robot and half unicorn. And I made this costume this year in Puerto Rico Comic Con. And oh my god, I have a photo, but maybe later. Yeah. Oh my god. I make many costumes. Many, 53.
What do you think? We need to bring a costume con down here. While she's doing that, I was here for Puerto Rico Comic Con during Memorial Day weekend, and I stood out there just to chat with people as they were coming out, and that was a lot more fun than being inside. And what I found was a lot of people said that you don't have a real costume shop here. That where you can actually go there because you have to buy your stuff overseas or put it together. Yes?
In my cosplay career, I got 7 years on the cosplay career. Before, I bought cosplay online, and then my friends are making my cosplays. And now, this cosplay, I made myself this cosplay.
Well, that's good, but you don't have one particular place. You have to go to many different places.
Not only in Comic Cons we're going to go with cosplays. So here in Puerto Rico, we're going to any place like, for example, Children's Foundation, and in the Children's Hospital, etc. We're going together with cosplays.
What she's talking about is not what you do, which is good, going to the hospitals and such. She's talking about a place where you can find the supplies.
Stores, supplies.
Any place stores, I can buy some silks.
Right, but you're talking about going to stores and buying things, but you have to go to several different stores to buy things. For us in the States, we can walk into certain shops that we know about and get everything in one place.
Okay.
Well, sorry.
A place that caters to like theater companies where it's the wig and the makeup and that's all in one place. Yeah.
So,
But even in San Antonio, I only know one costume shop.
so I don't know if you heard what Jill said. She mentioned that when she's working on costumes, she often spends as long in a hardware store looking for parts that she can adapt. I will, let me tell you, finding a source for 100 coconut shells.
Yeah.
He did.
Actually, I needed 54 polished half coconut shells. You can buy one, or you can buy 250. So, I was giving away coconut shells for a while. But it was worth it, because with 250, I could pick out the 54 most circular, which I needed for the dollar. But I also, because the way I was ordering, I was going online. I knew this costume was likely to travel, and when you start dealing with natural elements, you have to document where they came from, because otherwise they may get banned crossing certain borders. So because I bought through a licensed importer and had the receipts, I could say, yep, no, these coconut shells are certified safe, they were bought this way. California is really strict about agricultural products. So,
Australia too.
and actually Canada is as well. Canada, things made from animal parts, you often can't take across the border. So,
The jewelry was just as bad. Running the archer from Montreal, every piece of stone and metal had to be documented, and all the 2D art, flat art, there's no trouble getting across the border.
So, again, just to wrap up, we talked a lot about the resources that are out there. We all like the International Cosplayers Guild because we helped build it, so did those people over there. But they're not the only resource. And don't be afraid to challenge yourself. And concept, design, execution, presentation. That's why cosplay is art. So, and And I'm going to stop a couple minutes early because I want to encourage you to show and tell out there. They showed us some amazing photos, and I want you all to get a chance to see them. So I'm going to encourage you to mingle and show and tell rather than do more Q&A.
Before that starts, I'd like to ask all of our cosplay representatives to come up here and line up so that we can take pictures.
Of course.